Hello and welcome to another Discussion Friday podcast. Today I will talk about the differences between French and English cultures. As some of you may know, I'm a French Canadian living in an English area of Canada. This is not unusual at all, as many French first language people are living in English areas in Canada. Yes, Canada is officially bilingual, so if you need anything, you can go pretty much anywhere in Canada, speak French or English, and you should have someone who speaks both languages enough to help you out. Well, on paper anyway. Uh, it's not that perfect, as nothing is that perfect, of course. But yes, if you go to the federal services, by law, you will have the service in your chosen language. But it's certainly not always the case outside of the federal services. It's okay, I guess, since people tend to get in groups depending on many factors, and language is only one of those factors. So there might not be a need for a 100% bilingual coverage in certain areas. So it's okay. So during one of the discussions I've had with my students, one mentioned that he was of French descent, but did not speak French enough to hold a conversation. He was proud of his French background. He mentioned that being French, in his case, was more than just a language, but it was a culture, something way more profound than a way of communication. I found this way of thinking really interesting, but it raised a question. What are the differences between French and English cultures, if any? Well, after talking with this diverse group about how we all see the world, see each other, how we go by our lives, and etc., etc., I could see very obvious, a few actually very obvious differences. So I went and did some research on the subject just to see if what I was seeing, if I was right, or if it was just the group that I was talking with that had those ideas. Now, of course, keep in mind those are a very general thing, and it's no way exclusive of one or another. It also goes with where you were born. So French speaking, give you an example, French speaking from France and from Quebec will certainly have cultural differences, just like an American and an Englishman will have their cultural differences. Those differences would be more because of a geographic culture than language. Now, with this in mind, I will talk about a bit of both, and I will most likely offend some people with this, but meh. If you know me, you know it's not my intention to offend, but rather I prefer to explain my thinking process. So here we go. So in the similarities, well, those are very basic. Like basically, we use the same alphabet, the same numbers. We share a lot of words, even though some are pronounced differently, like table in English and table in French refers to the same object. And in both cultures, the immediate family is important. The structure and how we deal with our kids may be different, but overall, the idea is the same. We care for our kids, etc. Both cultures were also colonialist at one point, so this superior attitude is often seen in both cultures. But with the idea of keeping the podcast here under 25 minutes, I will have to stop here with similarities. There's a lot. Almost the same, but not. So those are different like that. The French is a Romance language, descended from Latin with German and English influences. while English is a Germanic language with Latin and French influences. So, yes, they share some similarities. Some words will mean different things, but are spelled the same. A good example of this would be advertisement in English, which means publicity. In French, avertissement is more a warning. Caution in English means to be careful. In French, caution is a security deposit. Now, yeah, some differences, right? Parole in English is related to a guided freedom, and in French, parole is a speech act, spoken words. And the list could go on and on. But again, in the idea of keeping it as short as possible, because we could go for hours here, so I'll stop here for those. Now, the differences. I kind of focused a little bit more on the differences, though there's not that many, to be honest. So the main difference I find from living in both cultures is that French tend to be a little bit more open about everything, and English not so much. A good example of this is when I used to teach in middle school, I was almost always assigned to the health class, sex ed. Most of the other Anglophones wanted to avoid this class as much as possible because of the uncomfortable feeling of what they had to be talking about. That is when I realized actually that the English culture is very prude. Test it if you dare. Drop the word sex in an English conversation between adults, and you will mainly see the step back body language, hand on the mouth, and as if you said a curse word or something. Now, if you try the same thing, same setup, but with francophones instead, you will be most likely somebody will say when. So I know, not all the time. This is a joke, folks. Come on. But it does express the francophone openness about the subject. Remember, French is the language of love. Here are some of the things I've noticed too. Remember, this is not scientific at all, just what I could gather from different conversations and things I've noticed through time and experience, personal experience. So, food. Well, really, you have to taste a culture to understand it, right? Well, for the French anyway. Because for French, food is life. We like good tasting food. It's not a party if you don't have food. And much more necessary even. Well, that might be typical to Canadian thing though, but it's still there. The look of the food is important too. And not the fact that it looks gross or no. That is for everybody, right? We all have that in some way or another. But good food is better if it actually looks good. Now, heck, as a French guy here, just to tell you how much I enjoy food, before I found Vegelution in Saint John, which is a vegetarian vegan restaurant, with their prize-winning poutine, I could have and have actually gone to Quebec. That is a 7-hour drive from here, just to get a poutine I like. That is how important food is for me. Good thing I don't have to do that anymore. I saved the trip. It allows me to actually have more good food more often. So, hey, shout out to everybody at Vegelution here. Thanks, guys. Continue your awesome work. It's, love the food. Okay, swear words. Now, this is a much more regional thing. But overall, we swear with what our taboos are. So, in Quebec, Canada, the swear words are mainly around religious things, religion-related objects, that we swear with. Nope, not giving any examples here. Just ask anybody from Quebec if they're willing to, and they'll tell you. And in the English region of Canada, most of the swear words are mainly about sex or body functions. Again, sorry, no example. Nope, not doing it. I'm sure you probably know a few swear words yourself. Discipline. Yeah, that's another big difference. The English tend to be a little bit more disciplined, I find, than the French. Just look at in history with the armies. All wars against French and English ended up with a win on the English side. Well, Napoleon Bonaparte versus Wellington here comes to mind. The only time that I can think of is when Joan of Arc kicked the English out of France. So it took a crazy French woman to kick the English butts out of France. Beware of the French women. No, joke aside, when I moved into an English area, I was told stories. The "I will wash your mouth with soap" thing that the English seemed to be fond of was, from my French roots, sounding more like torture to me. But nobody in the English words seemed to be really well affected by that. It was discipline. Okay. In general, like it's something more general. If you look at the French have a great love and respect for homeland, history, culture, the arts, and life in general. As the English culture, or at least American culture, it seems to be they place more value on monetary and material gain over a simple but good quality of life. To give you an example of that, really would be with alcohol. Well, one can't say the French wine, but in general, the francophone world it's everywhere. Like alcohol is everywhere. Just to give you another example here, my wife is from the French part of Belgium, and she told me that when she was in the hospital after giving birth, she was served a beer with her meal. Yeah, you got it right, a beer at the hospital without asking for, and as if it was only water was there, normal. Now, she's one that of the very few that do not drink alcohol at all. She doesn't enjoy it, so it's okay. So she asked for water. The reaction about the was about the same as if you would go and ask for a beer in your with your hospital meal in any English hospital. You know, the shock, surprise, denial, and that look of what the heck. And yeah, alcohol is for French is a much more social thing. Social drinking in the French world is key. It's not the let's get wasted attitude I find in the English area anyway. So and this was the same with the parties when I was younger. It's a thing that I don't do anymore, parties, but I guess I'm too old. But I certainly remember the parties I used to go to with my friends in both communities. So this most likely have changed now, but yeah, with the French, we tend to party hard and long. We do not value the let's get wasted, passed out, and call it a party. We had to go for as long as possible, the whole weekend if possible, with food, alcohol, music, fire on the beach, all night, etc. On the other hand, my English friends, I called them this new thing when I was younger. I was learning the English language, and that word came, party poopers. Yeah, they were going only as long as they could stand the alcohol, then passed out before the party really started. They woke up with a headache, and when we were actually just starting the real party. Poor them, they missed so much. Business. Now, in that field, it's kind of different. For the francophone, the customer is your equal. So you can have discussions, arguments, etc. You want to sell your stuff, but the stuff, and maybe you want to buy the stuff too, but not through a power struggle. It's not that. It's more the attitude of I will help you to find what you want, but walk over me and I will personally kick you out. It's it's how usually the francophones anyway will deal business. On the other end of the spectrum, you have the anglophone side, where the customer is king. Um, hmm, he gives you the money, so shut up and take the abuse. Well, not quite for the French, so that's the thing. Another difference is male-female relationship. It's always not an easy thing, but in general, I find the French to be more matriarchal oriented and the English to be more patriarchal oriented. It kind of translated in this way. When I was a teen, as a straight guy, my friends and I were trying to always show our best side to a girl we were interested in. Well, she was the one picking her partner after all. What I see in the English side, and this may be a regional thing though, but the guys tend to be much more aggressively courting the girls. So guys tend to be the ones choosing their partners. All in all, to conclude this, I'd say francophones and anglophones have a lot more in common than we may think. The differences are more often than none a regional thing that is very easy actually to get used to when you think about it. This is why I say, hey, you come from a different universe than I do. Talk to me, explain your view of the world, I'll do the same. Let's see what's the same, what's different. Enjoy the experience as something to learn from each other. And that's about that. So, as always, take care, and may you always find love, peace, and purpose in your lives. Take care.